Okay, so massive news to go over today is a huge new report has just dropped surrounding the Toronto Maple Leafs and their trade plans. And the Leafs are positioning themselves for a blockbuster move. We're going to break down exactly what this report is and discuss what it means going forward, as it has massive implications not only on the trade deadline, which is a while away, but over the next few weeks as the Leafs continue to look to upgrade. We're going to break down everything on this episode, as well as a few other things. But before we get into it, quick reminder to hit that subscribe button if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel. You guys have been an absolute piece of the sport. There's a ton to go over today, and some big reports have dropped here and kind of came out of nowhere, and it is surrounding top levels of management and the Leafs positioning themselves for a massive, massive move. And let's dive right into some of the reports that have surfaced recently. So you can see this here. MLSE CEO Keith Pelley has been enjoying working more closely with Brad Treliving and Craig Berube since taking a bigger day-to-day role after Brendan Shanahan's exit. And this, of course, led into this. Pelley said that Mitch Marner's departure gives the Leafs more cap space, and with the cap rising, it's, quote, go time. He made it clear Treliving has full backing to take a swing before March 6th, even with no first-round picks for the next 2 years. Pelley added there's urgency given the age of the roster and that this group is deep in its window. And obviously, it's not as easy it's easier said than done to upgrade. But I want to start with this. This is from Pierre LeBrun. We have some other reports as well. It seems now the Leafs are all in on this year. Of course, they went pretty much not all in last year, but they spent 2 first-round picks. They don't have 2 first-round picks anymore. They obviously don't have any for the next couple of years, but they have full backing of ownership. MLSE CEO Keith Pelley saying that the Leafs should and will go all in over the next few months.
Yeah, first of all, I think we should get used to the idea of the Leafs having no first round picks as long as they're in this window where they're going to compete for a Stanley Cup. But, Keith Pelley came in. The first thing that he said in that press conference is, we're not here to sell jerseys. We want to win a championship. This is the new thing that I want to bring to the table, right? And listen, it's easier said than done, of course. And of course, you're going to say these things and they sound great in the moment. But what actions are you going to take towards getting that done? The first thing that he's done across MLSE with every team, and we saw with the Raptors just recently as well, obviously Brendan Shanahan's gone, is get rid of all the VPs at every level. Whether it's TFC, the Raptors, Masai Ujiri's gone, Brendan Shanahan, all of these things. So now it's just Keith Pelley to the GM, and the GM can obviously answer to him. But the GMs have some more flexibility now in terms of the moves that they want to make, because before, they would have to take it to the VP would have to take it up, and then the VP could say no, could veto things. And we know for a fact that was happening a lot with Brendan Shanahan. And I think Brendan Shanahan did a great job rebuilding the Leafs in terms of the business side and how the Leafs are looked at and respected, and, working with the alumni, all of those things. But in terms of the on-ice product and vetoing trades and all these reports that are coming out that the Leafs want to make this move and stuff like that, and it never happens, some of that was on the VP, right? So now Brad Treliving has, not all of the freedom in the world, but some more freedom to make these moves, and the green light from Keith Pelley to go out and get a winger, go out and build a championship team this year, make a big splash at the deadline to go win a Stanley Cup. And there is multiple reports, like we're going to get it to in a second, about wingers being available now as the season's going to go on, and it looks like the Leafs are going to make a big splash at some point.
Yeah, and obviously we know that you mentioned it, Brendan Shanahan. He had a bit of a rough ending there. There was a lot of stuff with Mitch Marner trades, all these different things. But with him gone, obviously the cap space now, with the cap rising, the Leafs have a ton of spending, more than most teams. And there are some, and we'll dive into a few players here. Of course, we'll have full videos on a couple of them. But you can see, according to David Pagnata, Owen Tippett, they're listening on him, which is a very interesting player. And of course, Alex Tuch, who we're going to dive into a little bit more in this video as well. New report regarding him. So they've put the talks on hold mainly because of what's going on with the start of their season. Reading the tea leaves, it's going to cost a pretty penny to stay in Buffalo. So I'll have a full video probably covering Owen Tippett. But looking back at Alex Tuch, we had a video on him 2 or 3 days ago talking about how it makes sense for Nick Robertson, all these different things. There's been a lot of new reports on Nick Robertson, of course, finding an interested suitor willing to pay the price. There's been a couple teams already linked to Nick Robertson. But if we're going in this all-in mindset, and again, you're not going to be able to get some elite player, at least without giving up Easton Callum and Ben Danford, or both of them. But they might end up doing that. We may be trading Ben Danford or something like that. But for now, Alex Tuch, it seems that even though the talks are on hold, he will inevitably get traded, just not maybe as soon as some fans may have hoped.
Yeah, and on Owen Tippett, we'll touch on him in another video. We really want to dive into that because that's another really good option who, doesn't make that much money. He's a scoring physical winger that can put up 40 goals if he's playing in the right situation. But for Alex Tuch, speaking of a guy who can put up 40 goals, right? He's a scoring physical winger, but he's playing in Buffalo, and sounds like it's going to take a lot for the Sabres to re-sign him to stay in Buffalo, because he likes to play there, right? And he's from there. There was a whole thing about that, Bills Nation, all that stuff, Bills Mafia, right? And all those viral videos. But at the end of the day, that is not a winning team. And I feel like he wants to play on a winning team to a degree. And Toronto's not that far, right? And I made that point in our last video. So I still think after this season, he's going to make a lot of money. But in terms of acquiring him this year, it's going to cost quite a bit. You're looking at a prospect, you're looking at picks, that's for sure. And like we just mentioned to start the video, the Leafs don't have a first round pick, right, to be throwing away, or maybe a couple of years from now. But if, the Sabres, I don't think they're interested in that. They want to try to at least start competing. But yeah, I think it's an interesting fit there, that's for sure. He only costs, just north of $4 million. So you can make it work this year, moving salary cap space out. And obviously, there's been a lot of rumors about Nick Robertson, the fact that he probably won't finish this season as a Toronto Maple Leaf. So you're freeing up almost $2 million in that way already, if that ends up happening. So a lot of moving pieces here. I don't think Treliving likes to be active in season. I have to be honest. But I think with the Olympics this year and the condensed schedule, he might be forced to be a little bit earlier than usual. This is a guy that likes to build his team in the offseason, let things sit until the trade deadline, and he might make one or two moves to put your team over the edge, but never really make a splash, right? But now he's given the green light. I don't know if he was ever given that green light to this degree in Calgary because of ownership. So we'll see what he does with that, and we'll see when he pulls that trigger, because it might be earlier than we expect, and it's definitely going to be earlier than the trade deadline, because teams are going to be making moves, I think, heading into the Olympics, because you're going to have almost that whole month off at that point, and then the deadline happens right after. So I feel like teams are going to start to be active, in about 2 months.
Yeah, teams that are selling will probably sell or have to figure out if they're selling earlier. Barely any games in February. And you can see here as well, kind of summing up the report, reading between the lines, Brad Treliving has the full green light to take a swing here before the March 6th trade deadline. And of course, we're only handful of games into the season, but at the same time, we know, at least we hope, that this team will be competitive come trade deadline time into the playoffs. And there are some flaws to this team right now. Like, some of the additions they made in the offseason haven't looked great thus far. I mean, Scott Lawton hasn't played. Dakota Joshua started off slow. Michelli, I have faith there. We know they need a top 6 winger, and they haven't got it yet. Alex Tuch, if he's available, seems like he is. I don't think the Buffalo Sabres are going to have the money to re-sign him. Obviously, they can go for him. Owen Tippett. It's going to be interesting to see. So let us know down below who you want them to get, and if this gives you some encouraging mojo heading into the trade deadline. One quick thing before we wrap up as well, kind of talking about ownership. This report came out that Maple Leafs upper management will spend the offseason studying and looking ways to improve their home ice advantage. So they're looking at a bunch of different things here, and obviously we've seen some new stuff with social media team. Of course, this season, we're seeing a lot more interviews with the players one-on-one, and now we're going to see them looking at other ways to improve their home ice advantage, almost similar to the Toronto Blue Jays, and changing their stadium to be a competitive advantage, especially when it comes to free agency. Any thoughts on this? Especially, they keep talking about doing all this in lieu of Brendan Shanahan leaving. I wonder how much of an impact negatively he actually had on this the team and the environment. I think overall he did good though, but there's always some shade thrown in these reports.
No, I think that he did some good work. I'm not going to, throw shade at Brendan Shanahan. I think he did a fantastic job building it up in terms of the business side, right? The vetoing moves and stuff like that, that's a whole different conversation. But, it's interesting. You bring up the Blue Jays. They did that, right? To try and acquire new free agents in the building to give them a better advantage. And, you're actually facing home plate now if you're sitting in the outfield, right? So stuff like that. With the Toronto Maple Leafs, I think that there was a lot of damage done with a lot of the PR stuff and Mitch Marner leaving. Let's make no mistake about it, right? The whole summer, we saw it all. Let's pretend like it didn't, or don't pretend like it didn't happen, right? So I feel like now they're trying to do these one-on-one interviews. They have the pregame shows across social media, which is awesome. I've been tuning into those. They've been awesome with alumni and all of that. So I feel like they're trying to bring the fans closer to the players and make the team likable again. And that was one thing I felt as this season started already personally, that I'm like, this team feels more likable, and I feel like they're gonna, try their hardest in the playoffs. So I feel like they're trying to bring that right to all the fans. So I love it. I love it. They're gonna continue to add more stuff, but it already feels more immersive so far this season than, the last 5 years at this point.
Yeah, let us know what your thoughts are on that stuff you want to see there. We'll keep you updated every step of the way as the season inches closer and closer to the trade deadline. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.